is Mary Gilliland, whose award-winning collection is The Ruined Walled Castle Garden, that came out in 2020. Recent poems of Mary's and her commentary have also appeared in The Fiddlehead, Matter, Stand, Tab, and Vellum, and her work has been anthologized in Nuclear Impact, Broken Atoms in Our Hands, in the and Now Awards, the Best Innovative Writing, and is forthcoming in The Wild Gods. Mary's honors have included the Ann Stafford and Pablo Neruda Poetry Prizes and a Stanley Kunitz Fellowship from the Fine Arts Work Center of Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And I always, I love when I get to interact with poets that I actually attend readings with periodically. So it's very, very heartening to be able to finally have Mary as one of our featured readers today here on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. Thanks for being with us, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for that wonderful introduction. And also, I want to thank you for opening the Cultivating Voices umbrella for me. You see, folks, I'm on Twitter. I don't use Facebook. And so by special dispensation, I access this group through another poet, Peter Fortunato. So thank you, Peter. I've completed an atomic elegy excerpted in anthologies that Sandy mentioned, and I'll begin with a brief passage that occurs about halfway through this book-length manuscript. One of my readers has called it a poem of quirkiness, outrage, underlying anxiety, and many voices, apt for talking statues, news clips, and exclamations of the deceased. This elegy is set against the radiance of the high desert Southwest. It has rooms for Marie Curie, the Radium Girls, Los Alamos, and Fukushima. The poem also celebrates and mourns a character I have named Freddie. Freddie is a man who lived in New Mexico and was instrumental in the coalition that in 2003 got the state hate crimes law amended to include lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender rights. So this is page 36 from Nuclear Family. The narrator is recalling a celebration of the change in that legislation and also a stop that she and Freddie made at a bookstore in Los Alamos. Al would always sit out the dancing. He waved from our table, big smile, big black mustache. The fisherman and I paused for each round of applause for the governor's speech. A deputy from the Capitol offered his congratulations. The lights flicked on and off. Confetti snowed the white tablecloths. All the dancers switched partners, and you were mine. Freddie, it was brilliant that the final team sent to lobby the legislature for passage was 4 women. You'd said the hardest part, years, not months, was convincing all the GLB and allied groups across the state. In those days, the L's let you G's had the acronym, that the coalition had to add trans. In good time, Freddie, sitting in my museum, I remember while we stirred his coagulated cappuccino, the bookstore owner sprang to life, fire alarm like the bell at end of school day, but louder, unceasing. Mr. Bookstore had been telling his troubles with the T word, and there was that sideways push you could do with closed lips to make a dimple in your cheek. That little roll of your eyes, tell no one, But we know in this brief shining moment of New Mexico, the only state in the union to have both hate crimes law and non-discrimination law include transgender people. Release not just the dim inside of that going down slowly bookstore, but the whole small mall was ringing. The din let us escape to finish out our day trip after several days after the Coalition for Equality danced adorned with buttons. I got my rights on July 1st, 2003. 502 West leads out of Los Alamos to 84 and the switch south of Santa Fe to 85. Albuquerque's bowl of light is visible from Rio Rancho, the rosy peak of Sandia, and all the bears that roam it, cloaked in night. Now, with many thanks to Bertha, thank you. With many thanks to Bertha Rogers for selecting the ruined walled castle garden to win the Bright Hill Press competition. I'll read several of the book's shorter poems. To the Dark House is about Virginia Woolf. And in the middle, the second of the three stanzas, I will change voices where the poem switches from she to I. In that middle stanza, Woolf speaks. To the Dark House. Her exorbitant mind withstood headache persistent as sea urchin spines. But neuroplasticity went narcolept when concatenations of specular voices clung like electric eels, nasty welts lodged in her cortex. Her whole word family halted at the border. The unspeakable splashed from its burrow, stronger than she, lush rupture of young bodies stilled, explored as though she were a country. Scratched reams of ink have always brought me the next novel's shape, its true begin, troweling through talk, overheard in a shop on a corner. I carefully brush stray tendrils, the toque, cut of the jacket, length of the skirt, crux of a character who finds herself in a favorite chair, a room where she moves. This site would not excavate. It held sound waves, no footing, the ancient sea culling its sediment, a wet rush of grief and release, his chattering teeth after climax, her stifled bounds. The day was overcast. After lunch, she'd smoke her two Sobranis, let wraiths roam her palate, then walk by the river, something in her pocket besides hands. Next poem is for our climate. Is a transcendently beautiful place not to be ours? And the historic figure mentioned in this poem, Emma Meal, survived a 19th century hurricane that hit New Orleans. The sea bangs about and sweeps out half the earth of Ile Dernière with half its 1856 summer residents. Chance combination of genes or plans based on the weather consign personal fate to probability. How many can rise to the side of the saints and float among the rocks in a white dress? Shifting winds sweep Emma Meal back in. Little bags for keeping miracles streak her cheeks, lumps of fool's gold. On the last barrier island, entranced, shivering beneath the doctor's stethoscope, Emma fever dreams. The great clod across the marsh channels erodes with each storm strike. In the century after steam, then the century after flight. mortals will rebuild, site rocks to float among. Infinitives. To admit fields are on fire, oil fields, though we do not yet see them burning. To remember our grandparents sweltered each summer, waiting for the streetcar for nightfall. To irrigate loosened earth with native water. To bail out the seed banks, to chew our food. To call the bluff of the brand name the marketing genius. To digest resources burnt to a crisp threshold, to savor our craving to satiation, to be free of litter strewn beyond us, steering through the Hesperides, sacred groves, blessed isles, past the ghost of a man on the moon's new frontier. Our course set for the destitute sunset. The United States has been waging a war in one place or another ever since it came into existence, and I've been increasingly conscious of militarism as a really vile root of all the hostile isms. Two phrases in the next poem were original names for Baghdad. Those phrases are city of peace and gate of the gods. Occupied. Bruised ribs, raked shins in the search for a sweet grape among dry vines, endlessly back and forth, reading maps, reading the legends, city of peace, gate of the gods. Standing knee-deep in the mud of an untilled field, a rogue bull amid the red dirge, hub of bricks on the floodplain, submerged save for its fame, re-upped, streets radial from the gardens, called again to prayer, land of marshes and sand, looted and forced once more. Bone chips rattling, arms gone to a roadside bomb, meat cold in the bowl. Do I have time for one more? I forgot my start time. One more? Okay. So this is the source of the chapbook title. It's the last poem in the book, Earthly Mishaps. And Mare's Tail is mentioned. It's a very vigorous plant. Also mentioned in the poem is Brother Cadfael. He is a fictional 12th century herbalist and monk who solves murder mysteries. And the poem speaker is a man. He's a gardener, speaks this poem. Earthly mishaps. Faint, humming, inexorable in the damp, below the ruined, walled castle garden. Mare's tail tunnels an 8-foot root. Sly boots. I've spaded the circle, reached to my elbow. Still the plant breaks. As Eve brought a man his labor, it will multiply tenfold. I shop for survival, a sprayer to level pride, melancholy, and unwanted shoots. The canister is lowered from its shelf, bagged in plastic. The till rings, keys in hand. I see the car park as a horse-tracked swale where Cadfael leads his roan, saddlebagged with an apothecary box. Medieval herbicide? As he stumps through mud, the monk's brass scale tips. One pan sways with the bitterness of interrupted life. The other, Eve's radical helplessness. So I'd love to email with anybody who'd like to contact me through my website, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Mary. You've been hearing from Mary Gilliland reading from the ruined wall castle garden. And what a really exquisite range of poetry coming from different places of consciousness, raising consciousness. I mean, I marvel at the poet that can take us to those many places in a lyrical way, because I tend to have a one-track mind in my poetry. So I really appreciate when I get to hear about not LGBTQ rights through poetry, the Anthropocene, these are the nuclear issues of nuclear threat, all this vast range of things from one individual whose eyes are wide open to the world and sharing that sense of urgency around humanity with us. Thank you, Mary. What a pleasure to have you finally reading with us. And I hope you will be back soon. And of course, thank you to Bertha Rogers as well. Great to have you. Well, next, I mentioned earlier that I sometimes meet poets who are like, they know all about promotion, like in the best way of how to merge the business of writing poetry with the business of bringing poetry to platforms. And when I had the chance to go to Tamara's launch, I marveled at the way that you presented your work, but also brought the audience into your work and have found these really unique ways to let people know about your very important collection that we'll be featuring today, Intention Tremor, and how you also have been using your poetry to promote change, social justice, and educate with, again, profound poetry with some very serious intention. And so I so much respect what you do. Let me share the formal biography with you all. Tamara Selman wrote her memoir, Intention Tremor, which is a hybrid collection of prose and poetry forms in the 5 years that followed her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Dozens of her poems, short stories, essays, and other writings have been published or anthologized since the mid-1990s. She's won several awards